episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Well, folks, we are back for another exciting episode. Before I reveal the movie that I'm going to talk about for this episode, I got a couple of things to talk about. I came to realize prior to recording this episode is that I'm almost at the 200th episode of Codo Cinema. It should have come as a surprise because I've been doing this podcast for a while, and I remember hitting 150 episodes in 2023, and now, almost 2 years later, I am almost hitting 200 episodes. So in total, this episode will be episode 194. That is right, folks. We are down to 6 episodes left where Codo Cinema will reach its 200th episode. Now, the other thing to talk about is I got a guest with me on board. And that is my brother Mike.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for having me back on to Codo Cinema for the new year.
Why, no problem. And since we're both on this episode together, I thought this movie that we're going to talk about will be a good one. Now, this is a movie that I was originally going to talk about back in November. Now it's one of the few movies that I had to push back because I was sick with pneumonia back in November, and it was one of the movies I was going to talk about in November, but I decided to push it back to 2025 just to have the entire month of November to recover. So anyway, this movie that my brother and I were going to talk about is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Now, this movie, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, is a 2019 American biographical drama film on the TV presenter Mr. Fred Rogers, and is directed by Mariel Heller and written by Micah Fitzgerman Blue and Noah Harpster. Inspired by the 1998 article, Can You Say Hero? By Tom Junod, published in Esquire, and it stars Tom Hanks, Matthew Rhys, Suzanne Kelechi Watson, and Chris Cooper. It depicts Lloyd Vogel, who is being played by Matthew Rhys, a troubled journalist for Esquire who is assigned to profile a TV icon named Fred Rogers, who is being played by Tom Hanks.
Yep, Tom Hanks plays Mr. Rogers, or should I say Fred Rogers, in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Yep. Now, before we break down this movie, my brother and I thought we'd share a little bit of history on Mr. Rogers, a little bit of our background.
We actually watched the show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood on PBS Kids when we were little. We watched a few episodes of it.
That is right. I mean, we saw a few episodes of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when it was still on when it was still on PBS Kids. In fact, what we didn't realize that the show ran from 1968 to 2001. So at the time when the show ended in 2001, some reruns were still played on PBS Kids.
Yes, and they also did spin-offs too, like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, for example.
That's right, because with the success of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it led to a spin-off show titled Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, which centers on one of the puppets that Mr. Rogers has, which is named, you guessed it, Daniel Tiger.
Or should we say Daniel Striped Tiger?
Yep. Now, even with this movie that came out, there was even a documentary that also came out around the time when A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood was being made.
It's actually called Won't You Be My Neighbor, to which the film came out in 2018.
And for what I heard the documentary is real good too. Aside from Mr. Rogers getting a spin-off show, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, Mr. Rogers has also made a few appearances as well, like Sesame Street. In fact, Mr. Rogers also appeared on an episode of Arthur.
Yeah, that's right, folks. He appeared on the Arthur show.
I believe he made a couple appearances. He made at least one or two appearances on Arthur, there is an episode that actually features Mr. Rogers when he comes to visit Elwood City. And I know, and of course, I mean, even around that time, like Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, he was born in 1928, and he passed away in 2003 on February 27th of 2003. And around that time, the PBS station did a very special memorial service for him.
I would say this was a true dedication to Fred Rogers.
Yes, because because Fred Rogers really left a huge impact on many people, including Mark Brown. Mark Brown, who's the author of Arthur, and of course also part of the PBS Kids show as well. And he described Mr. Rogers as both a friend and a terrific role model for how to use television and the media to be helpful to kids and families.
His work in children's television has been widely lauded, and he received more than 40 honorary degrees and several awards, including a Lifetime Achievement Emmy in 1997 and a Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2002. He was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 1999. Rogers influenced many writers and producers of children's television shows, and his broadcasts provided comfort during tragic events, even after his death. He died at age 74 of stomach cancer.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yes. I mean, first of all, rest in peace to Fred Rogers, Mr. Fred Rogers. You will always be our neighbor. And of course, there's this film that came out in 2019. Like, this film's gonna turn 6 years old.
It's been like 5 or 6 years since the movie came out.
Yes, and also to add on to this, my brother and I, we went to see this movie when I was home for Thanksgiving break from college. Me and my brother, we went to see this movie in theaters because we were very well aware of Mr. Rogers, especially watching some of his episodes on TV. But when we went to see this movie in theaters, it was all elderly people. It was like a full house of elderly people, including middle-aged people as well, even some young people as well, which includes us, because Mike and I, we were born in 1998, and this show was still running, even though it ended in 2001. We saw a few episodes even after the show was done airing.
Even though Arthur is one of them, including Sesame Street, he also appeared in Wheel of Fortune.
He did?
Yes, he did. I mean, I actually look up into the filmography of Fred Rogers, and he actually appeared in Wheel of Fortune back in 1988.
Oh, I did not know that. That's amazing. That's amazing too.
Yes.
Yep. Now the film's budget. The film's budget was $25 million, and it made $68.4 million at the worldwide box office. Technically, it's a success.
Yes.
And of course, Tom Hanks, who played Mr. Rogers, was nominated for Best Supporting Actors at the Academy Awards,
as well as the Golden Globes, Critics' Choice Awards, Screen Actors Guild, and BAFTA Awards, among others.
That is right. But anyway,
I thought he would be nominated for Best Actor because he was actually the lead, but I didn't know that he was a supporting character.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, though, I mean, the sole purpose of this movie wasn't really focused on Mr. Rogers, but rather than the journalist who is writing the story on Mr. Rogers.
That's Lloyd Vogel.
Yes, Lloyd Vogel, Matthew Rhys' character, is the lead guy.
And director Marielle Heller described Lloyd as the viewer's entry point into Fred's teachings and expressed hope that Lloyd's character development and growth as a new father would compel viewers to reflect upon themselves.
That is true, because this film really opens up That's true because this film opens up. Let's go to the opening of this movie, shall we?
Let's
Let's dive into this movie.
Let's get on the trolley.
Let's get on the trolley and go into Mr. Rogers' neighborhood for a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Ding ding.
So anyway, like you said, Mike, Lloyd Vogel, the guy.
Yes, he's a cynical journalist who is assigned to profile Fred Rogers for the magazine Esquire.
And of course, the point of Fred's teachings could help express hope for Lloyd's character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the opening, like Mr. Rogers really has like this picture board that features 5 doors. 3 of them opened up to familiar faces like Lady Aberlin, King Friday the 13th, and Mr. McFeely. Better watch out, Jason, for there's an OG Friday the 13th for ya. In the form of a king. So anyway, this 4th door is opened up and is revealed to be the face of Mr. Rogers' troubled new friend, Lloyd Vogel, who has a black eye and a cut near his nose.
I don't remember Lloyd Vogel have a black eye.
I don't remember that either. I remember his face was damaged.
Well, on top of like the nose.
Yeah, on the nose. Yeah, and even before that, what are we talking about? I mean, even before that, what are we talking about? We were leaving out one of the most important things about Mr. Rogers. The song. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Like that's how the movie opens up. I mean, it's so nostalgic too because to anybody who watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that's how it opens up. We get this beautiful. We get the beautiful landscape of the town. Like the camera is zooming in on this town, and it's basically like a miniature set, right? Like this set, right? Like it's like this toy set a little bit if you really think about it, and it looks so good, and that's how the show opens up. And I really liked how the movie opens up with it too, and it leads into Mr. Rogers' house, right? And of course, going into the song, "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" And let's be honest, when you think of Mr. Rogers, you think of the song itself. Like it's a really good song. Heck, even SNL did a parody of that with Eddie Murphy as Mr. Robinson.
Very hilarious.
Now, don't quote me on this, but I think he actually liked Eddie Murphy's parody of Mr. Rogers, because come to think about it, like, Mr. Robinson is basically a parody of Mr. Rogers, and it's supposed to be funny, but on SNL, right? But Mr. Rogers, PBS Kids, come on, you can't go wrong with that.
And here are the rest of the lyrics.
Rest of the lyrics to the song.
I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor?
And that's the song right there. Like even when he goes in, he basically throws on like a different coat, right?
Yes.
Throws on a different coat, throws on different shoes, and of course does his introduction.
Hello, neighbor.
Yeah, he's very calm. Like you look at Mr. Rogers, he's real calm and happy.
And it was all thanks to Tom Hanks' performance.
Yeah, and speaking of which, this comes as a real surprise too, and I didn't know about this till this movie came out. Ancestry confirmed that Tom Hanks and Fred Rogers are actually 6th cousins.
What?
So yeah, that's a real surprise right there. I mean, this was announced before the film came to theaters. Like, Tom Hanks and Fred Rogers are related. That's a real surprise right there.
Wow.
I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but that's pretty good timing.
Yep.
And of course, like I said, we did talk about the picture board, but of course, Mr. Rogers keeps going on saying like he notices that Lloyd has been hurt, and not necessarily on his face. He is struggling to forgive the one who hurts him, and he even explains about what forgiveness means. And Mr. Rogers leaves to visit Lloyd. Shall we?
Let's go.
And we get the little music playing in the background of Mr. Rogers, the piano music, which is basically some of the themes from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
And you also got the xylophone. There was a xylophone that was playing in the background.
That's right, because there's like a xylophone that is added to add to the overall charm to it.
It was so beautiful.
Yeah, and the sets too. Like this is basically a toy set, if you know what I'm saying, right?
Then we actually cut over to New York.
Yeah, we cut to New York City in 1998, where Lloyd Vogel, an award-winning but cynical Esquire journalist who attends his sister Lorraine's wedding along with his wife Andrea, who is a public attorney and a fan of Mr. Rogers, and of course their newborn son Gavin. Now, of course, as I mentioned, Lloyd Vogel is being played by Matthew Rhys, and of course Lorraine is being played by Tammy Blanchard, with Andrea, Lloyd's wife, being played by Suzanne Kelechi Watson, and of course Gavin, their son, is being played by Zoe Harsh, with Lorraine being married to Todd, being played by Noah Harpster. During the reception, Lloyd comes across his estranged father, named Jerry, being played by Chris Cooper. And Jerry makes a joke about Lloyd's deceased mother, Lilia, being played by Jessica Hetch, whom he cheated on and abandoned when she was dying of cancer 20 years earlier. This enrages Lloyd into punching his father and starting a chaotic brawl, which ends Lloyd being socked in the face by another guest, putting a scar on his face.
Oof. Jerry was talking about his wife.
Right, and Lloyd doesn't want to talk about it.
Whoa, that's not the whole story. Your mother was not the same. Until Lloyd punches his own father in the face. And then, his sister was like, "What the hell?"
His sister came in. Yeah, that's right. His sister. I think wine was spilled on his. A glass of wine spilled on her.
Whoa.
On her wedding dress.
Well, behind, including her husband.
Right.
That is so shocking.
Even Lloyd's wife sees it all,
including the baby.
Right.
The baby cried too, and you also hear see all the people coming in the background, the ringing sounds too.
Even leads back into Mr. Rogers saying "Have you ever felt like that before?" All the rage and anger. Even Mr. Rogers pointed out to his childhood. He had a child when he was little. He was actually chubby. He was overweight, and I believe it's revealed too that he was even poked fun of as well.
That is so sad. No one should make fun of people's body transformations.
That's really sad. And he keeps talking about Lloyd up to the point where Mr. McFeely comes in.
Speedy delivery.
Yep. He comes in with a videotape, and
I also like the speedy delivery theme.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Dun dun. Dun 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 dun.
Speedy delivery.
He's played by a different actor too.
Yeah, it's a different actor. Actually, Mr. McFeely. Actually, here's another fun fact about that. McFeely is the middle name to Fred Rogers.
Oh.
Yeah, that's kind of ironic. Mr. Rogers took his own middle name and made a character out of that. So I thought that was pretty clever.
And there was a song called Speedy Delivery.
Yep. Yeah, even Mr. McFeely gets his own song about speedy delivery. He shows Mr. Rogers the videotape about how to make a magazine.
Yes. And then Fred Rogers puts the tape in the VC
in the video cassette,
and then
and then they show it on picture picture.
I don't know how they did that, but that is very amazing.
I mean, it's amazing how they were able to show it on picture picture, leading into 1998, where we see Lloyd working at that same company. That's amazing. Here's the thing about that video. That video that Mr. McFeely had, when he shows it on the picture picture, it does a good job showing how the magazine is being made in an easy to understand way for Mr. Rogers' audience to understand, which is essentially children, as it is a kids show. I feel like Mr. Rogers is more of a kids show. It left a huge impact on not just kids but also adults as well.
That's true, folks.
Even the next day, when Lloyd's editor assigns him to interview Mr. Rogers, the editor wants Lloyd to write a 400-word article about heroes, and Mr. Rogers is one of them. And every other person on the list refused to be interviewed by Lloyd, and only Rogers agreed. Lloyd has gained a reputation for writing nasty articles about people, and so everyone tries to stay away from him. And Lloyd believes that he is an investigative journalist and cannot understand why he is being assigned a fluff piece. He calls this a fluff piece.
A fluff piece?
I don't think it's a fluff piece at all. I mean, I believe interviewing Mr. Rogers is a good honor. Think about that. Mr. Rogers, the man who has impacted the many lives of children and adults everywhere, right? And this guy, Lloyd Vogel, thought that this is more of a fluff piece? Come on, man. But he does get into it a little, but he learns more and more about this guy. And of course, he gets a phone call, he gets a phone call later on when he comes back to his apartment, and then he travels to WQED studio in Pittsburgh to interview Rogers. And to anybody who knows Mr. Rogers is the type of person who gives his complete and undivided attention to whoever he is talking to. He's loved by everybody on his sets. And there's another fun fact about his interviews. When it comes to interviews, Fred Rogers was known to be extremely difficult to interview because he cared more about the person interviewing him than he did about being interviewed, and would often use the time to befriend the person interviewing him. And that's what he did with Lloyd Vogel. Because when Lloyd came, he thought he was just gonna, he thought he was just gonna go for an interview. But no, it was something more. There's a lot more to that, especially with Mr. Rogers. You see the conversation that Mr. Rogers is having with Lloyd, especially Lloyd's nose injury. Even Rogers is dismissive of his fame and displays concern for Lloyd's injury, prompting a discussion in which Lloyd relates to Rogers the issue of his relationship with his father, whose apology and attempt at reconciliation Lloyd has rebuffed. Lloyd is still holding on to that burden, he's holding on to that burden of not, forgiving.
Yes, it's basically difficult.
Difficult. And I like how Mr. Rogers is trying to help him. He's trying to help him. And Rogers tells him his ways of dealing with anger, including striking the keys of a piano. And Rogers shows a genuine interest in what children learn from his show, and is intent on making sure that they learn the right values from him. He believes that his show gives children positive ways to deal with their feelings. And that is real true, because there are a lot of topics that Mr. Rogers has talked about on his show. In fact, there is one episode I remember, and I think it was and it featured Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch of the West. Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch of the West on The Wizard of Oz, made an appearance on the Mr. Rogers Show. She made an appearance on the show in 1975. Fred Rogers invited Margaret Hamilton on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood to show that her part in The Wizard of Oz as the Wicked Witch of the West was pretend, and children needed be afraid of her because of how sweet of a person she was in real life.
I mean, 50 years.
I mean, yeah, 50 years ago. That's kind of crazy. That's crazy. 50 years ago, Margaret Hamilton made an appearance on Mr. Rogers. The same Margaret Hamilton that played the Wicked Witch of the West. And that's true. It's just pretend. She's an actress. She is acting the character. You know, she's just playing a character. It's not like she's doing this in real life. No. She's just playing a character.
The character in The Wizard of Oz, and she holds up very well.
And she does, yeah, and she does. Like that's just one example. I think there's another example. There's another example. There's a few other examples out there too, but this is just one of them. Heck, there are several celebrities that make appearances on Mr. Rogers, including Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton actually made an appearance on Mr. Rogers as well. In fact, I believe that's where he got his start. So anyway, we move forward. Like we even see, like Mr. Rogers, like do like a little episode. Like he tries to put up a tent, but he's struggling with it, and he does this twice. Funny enough, and the first time he tries to do it, he gets interrupted by Lloyd. I like that little moment where one of the crew members says, "We can't fire him, can we?"
No, of course not.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. And then the second time he tries to do it for real, but he struggles with it. And that actually happened in an episode where there is an episode where Mr. Rogers struggles to put up a tent. And we get a moment where we go into the land of make believe. With the help of Lady Aberlin, the trolley, and of course the appearance of
Daniel Striped Tiger.
That is right. We get an appearance from Daniel Striped Tiger himself, to which Mr. Rogers also plays.
Oh, hello, Lady Aberlin.
Oh, hello, Daniel Striped Tiger.
I feel like in both versions of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, I feel like Tom Hanks' impression on Daniel Striped Tiger, I'd say he was okay.
Like you can't beat the OG. You can't beat the OG Mr. Rogers playing Daniel Striped Tiger. You can't beat that.
No, of course not.
Like Daniel Striped Tiger, come on, he's amazing.
He's too shy to talk.
But that's okay, Daniel. I like that little moment when Lloyd meets Daniel Striped Tiger. Like, it's a cute little moment.
Well, there's also a song where Lady Aberlin was singing, and Daniel Striped Tiger was talking to Lady Aberlin about that skunk.
That's right, because Mr. Skunk sprayed all over Daniel Striped Tiger, and he got very mad. He doesn't even know what to do.
And then there was a song called What Did You Do with the Magic You Feel When You Pound Some Clay or Some Dough?
And that's like that's like singing, like to calm himself down, right? Make him feel better, right? And make it feel better, right? I mean, well, in accordance to Daniel Striped Tiger, right?
That's basically the name of the song. What do you do with the mad that you feel?
That's a pretty good song.
And then Lloyd was actually listening to it.
Yeah.
And of course, we also cut back to her boss.
Yeah, like Lloyd talks to his boss, Helen, who is the editor of this of the journal of the Esquire. This is just to investigate Mr. Rogers, determined to expose Rogers' nice persona as an act. Lloyd watches several episodes of the Mr. Rogers show, but is unable to discern anything. Rogers tells his viewers that the biggest mistake parents make is to forget their own childhood.
He also appeared in shows too, like the Arsenio Hall show.
And then, of course, Lloyd interviews Rogers again when he visits New York, and he also meets Joanna, Mr. Rogers' wife. Lloyd refers to Rogers as a living saint, but Joanna doesn't like that term, which indicates that Rogers' state of being is not achievable. she says that above all, Rogers is human, faults and all.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to describe it. Mr. Rogers, yeah, people saying calling him a saint. Okay, that could be true, but like he's more than that. He is human. He's got his own faults. He's got his own doubts, but he's got a lot of other things on his mind too.
I mean, Joanne Rogers also mentioned he has a temper.
That's true. There was an episode of Mr. Rogers, like this was around the time when John Lennon was shot and killed, and Mr. Rogers did an episode talking about other things that were going on, including the death of John Lennon, and he even mentions that he himself gets angry too. Even though people ask if Mr. Rogers gets angry, of course he does.
Yes. And I'm pretty sure he did the song. What did you do with the magic you feel?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, even Mr. Rogers has his own temper as well. I mean, that's a perfect way to describe it, especially from Mr. Rogers' wife. And speaking of which, Joanna Rogers makes a cameo appearance towards the end of the movie at a restaurant where Lloyd and Mr. Rogers went to for peace and quiet. We'll get to that later, but I just want to throw that out there. Lloyd and Rogers take the subway, and he continues to dodge Lloyd's questions and reminiscences about raising his two sons. And yes, Mr. Rogers has two sons, and Rogers agrees with Lloyd when he says that it could not have been easy for his sons to have Rogers as their father, and on top of that, he shows Lloyd a sign language for friend, and then of course we get to hear the song again from the people on the subway. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I've always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my neighbor? Oh. Everybody on the subway was singing, and Mr. Rogers loved it. He loved it.
Oh, that was wonderful.
Everybody loved it. And then we cut to Lloyd meeting the puppets.
Yes.
And the first one that he meets is da da da.
I am King Friday the 13th. Lloyd Vogel, the journalist, I presume.
Yep. And then, of course, he meets the other one.
And here's Daniel Striped Tiger. Sometimes Daniel is too shy to talk, but that's okay, Daniel.
And Daniel waves at Lloyd.
Yeah, it's very cute and funny. And we ever met Daniel Striped Tiger before? Lloyd Vogel says, no.
And Daniel asks Mr. Rogers, can I say hi to him and talk to him?
I like to meet Old Rabbit.
And the reason why he said that because it's revealed that Lloyd used to have a rabbit, and it's supposed to be Old Rabbit.
Yes, I don't want to talk about Old Rabbit. And then Fred Rogers was talking back to Daniel. He was like, "It looks like Lloyd doesn't want to talk about the Old Rabbit, and that's okay. Hey, at least Tom Hanks handled the puppets in The Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood better than the Disney live-action remake of Pinocchio."
So anyway, later on, this ends the interview leading up to Lloyd arriving home to find Jerry and his wife Dorothy. And Dorothy is being played by Wendy McKenna, and they're talking with Andrea. Jerry tries to apologize to Lloyd for his behavior at the wedding, and he even tries to explain that when Dorothy was here, like she tried to help Jerry, right? Help become a better person.
Yes, just to grow the hell up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Like even when like Lloyd doesn't even understand that either. Like he still carries this burden, right?
Yes.
He carries this burden that he has of his mother passing away and then Jerry leaving the two of them behind. Like even Jerry knows that it was a real mistake too. And Jerry tries to better himself, trying to get better, try to like try to grow the hell up. Yeah, that's why. I mean, wow, he literally said that.
Yes, he did. And of course, Lloyd actually started to get angry.
Like he berates Jerry for cheating on his mother Lilla while she was dying of cancer, and Lloyd says that Lilla's death was painful as she fainted from screaming with the pain, and Jerry was nowhere around as he was sleeping around with Dorothy. And he orders him to leave. He orders him to leave, but Jerry suffers a heart attack and is transported to the hospital. And I'll be honest, this is a what have I done moment.
Yes, and you could definitely see the guilty look on his face.
Like he just he berated his own father, leading to him having a heart attack.
Well, technically, it's a cardiac stenosis.
Oh yeah, cardiac stenosis. Yeah.
And at first I thought it was like a stroke or
I
something.
thought it was a stroke too because he had his hands on his head. But no, it was like a heart attack because of all the berating that is going on. It struck him.
Yes.
It struck him. Yes, what Jerry did was bad. It was bad, but he's trying to like turn things around for himself. Trying to do better for himself. Like, yes, I mean, at the point, I don't think he didn't meant to hurt anybody at the situation, but the fact that Lloyd held on to this burden for so long and doesn't forgive his father really shows that he doesn't want to forgive the person that hurt him.
And that's his dad. There's the answer right here.
That's like the main thing that Lloyd is struggling with. Forgiving those who hurt him.
Yes.
We cut to the hospital. Like, he refuses to remain overnight in the hospital with the rest of his family. Like, his wife is there too. His wife Andrea is there as well. His wife Andrea tries to tell Lloyd to stay at the hospital, but no, Lloyd has to go back and finish his work.
And he saw Daniel Striped Tiger again.
He saw Daniel Striped Tiger again in somebody's backpack.
Well, claiming it was Fred Rogers.
But then Andrea's like, fine, you know what? Go do your business. I'm gonna stay here with your family, dude. Lloyd cares about his work over his family, though. His dad is in the hospital, mind you, after a heart attack, and this guy leaves. He leaves him just to go finish his interview with Mr. Rogers. Okay, yeah, he wants to finish the job, but couldn't he just stay with his dad?
Yes.
Remember, and this also goes in full circle too. When Lloyd's mom was in the hospital too, his dad left too.
Yes.
Now, this comes in full circle.
Mm-hmm.
Like father, like son.
You have to take care.
Like
family.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to take care of your family.
Like father, like son.
Yes.
Like Jerry left. Left his wife who's died of cancer, and Lloyd left with his father in the hospital with a heart attack.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at the connection right there.
Mm-hmm.
That comes in full circle.
And then he actually jumped on the bus.
Jumped on the bus to go to Pittsburgh.
And he thought he thought it was Fred Rogers at the bus at first.
But no.
It was a different guy.
So we go to the studio again. Lloyd is exhausted, and he sees Mr. Rogers. He's like, oh,
it's my good friend, Lloyd. You remember Lloyd Vogel?
And he decides the topic for this episode was to talk about hospitals.
Yeah, I mean, Lloyd doesn't want to talk about hospitals because he hates it.
Like, he hates hospitals. Sometimes when people are hurt and sick, they have to go to the hospital.
That's definitely true.
Would you like to pretend to be at a hospital? No! Like, he asks that question and Lloyd faints.
Yeah, he actually collapsed.
He did, yes,
Then-
he did, and he
then-
wakes up to the land of make believe, yeah.
And then-
And we see the little trolley coming by.
Ding, ding, ding.
And then, of course,
A cameo of an owl.
we get to see an owl cameo, and then
And the owl was like, "Hello, old rabbit."
and of course, Lloyd's got bunny ears.
Yep.
And then King Friday the 13th comes in and says, "Oh, the rabbit, I presume."
Lloyd says, "I'm not old rabbit. Where's Fred?"
Daniel Striped Tiger comes in and says, I've been waiting to meet you, old rabbit. I'm so glad you came for a visit."
Aww.
"Hello, Lady Aberlin."
Well, Lady Aberlin. Oh man, it's Lloyd's wife.
You can tell he's basically dreaming right now.
Yes.
Hey, they don't call it the land of make-believe for nothing. So yeah, instead of like, well, whoever's playing Lady Aberlin, but it's Lloyd's wife as Lady Aberlin.
Yes. And we are discussing about hospitals. Well, according to King Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Lady Aberlin says, "Well, a hospital is a place where people's bodies get hurt."
Well, what about when people's feelings are hurt?
Daniel Striped Tiger says,
Well, you talk about them. And of course, it leads into a musical number about talking about people's feelings, right?
"Yes."
And Fred Rogers walks out too, and looks at Lloyd. You know they're all looking at Lloyd, right?
Yes. Well, according to the lyrics, Fred Rogers says, "I like you." And Lloyd, repeating the lyrics, well, from Lloyd to according to Lloyd, he says, "I like you." And then it keeps going on between Fred Rogers and Lloyd Vogel. "I'm sad. I'm sad. I'm angry."
And then Mr. Rogers asks, "Tell me, when was the last time you ever felt angry?"
Did something happen?
And then something did happen. We see another dream where his mom, Lila, if I'm saying her name right, I believe I'm saying her name right, who is in the hospital, like who's in the hospital, like she sees Lloyd. Lloyd is upset. Like Lloyd is upset. He sees her own mom in the hospital bed, and he recognizes his anger being for her memory, but assures him that she doesn't need it.
That's definitely true. She doesn't need Lloyd's anger.
No. I believe this is a sign to move on, you know.
Yes, Lloyd needs to move on.
Move on and get rid of that burden that he has inside of him.
Especially his anger.
Yes.
You cannot be angry all the time.
I know. And Lloyd awakens, like, he wakes up in Mr. Rogers' house. And everybody on the set sees Lloyd
collapse
on the set.
And I believe one of the people was trying to get help.
Yeah, one of them was getting help. And he wakes up at the house. And
hearing the piano playing in the background.
Yeah, that's right. So then,
how did Lloyd ended up at Fred's house?
I'm not really sure. Probably, I think either an ambulance, I believe, or maybe a car. I think Mr. Rogers drove.
And Queen Joanne Rogers.
That's true. He wakes up, he hears Mr. Rogers and his wife playing. So, Lloyd and Rogers later go to a restaurant where Rogers asks Lloyd to spend 1 minute thinking about the people who loved him into being and encourages him to forgive Jerry.
Yes, they have like a moment of silence at the restaurants. And then we do get a cameo from Joanne Rogers, Fred Rogers' real wife.
This is a really good moment. Like, the entire minute is just pure silence. Like, you hear nothing.
A moment of silence.
It's a moment of silence. It's a real good It's a really, really good moment in this movie. And you see the look on Lloyd's face. He is upset. He's not only thinking about the people. He's not only thinking about the people who loved him into being, but also, I believe at the moment he's thinking about his mom and his dad.
Yes.
So later on, Lloyd apologizes to Andrea for leaving her and Gavin at the hospital, and I believe the two of them got a subway ride back home. And of course, Lloyd decides to visit Jerry and Dorothy. Dorothy is Jerry's second wife, at their home. So he learns that Jerry is dying of a prolonged illness, and the reason Jerry attempted to reconnect with Lloyd.
It's basically cardiac stenosis.
Cardiac stenosis, that's the prolonged illness that was going on. So Lloyd forgives Jerry, promises to be a better father to Gavin, and writes an article about Rogers' impact on his life. And Andrea comes by to visit too, and the moments where...
Well, actually, both Jerry and Lloyd had a drink.
That's true.
Yep. And of course, and yes, and going back to the Lloyd's sister and especially they actually both show up at the end.
Yeah.
Lloyd's sister and basically his brother-in-law.
Yeah, like they all visit.
And Andrea reads the article, and it was amazing.
It was an amazing article. It was a good article about Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers paid a visit to the house as well. So then Rogers asks Jerry to pray for him before he departs.
And Fred Rogers meets Gavin for the first time. He says, "Hello, Gavin. Hello. I hope you and I can be friends sometime."
So, yep. So then anyway, to wrap this up, Jerry dies shortly after Rogers' visit, and Lloyd's 10,000-word article titled "Can You Say Hero?" is published as Esquire's cover story. And there is a funeral for Jerry. There is a funeral for Jerry, but it does get a happy ending. It does get a happy. It's sad that Jerry had to go out like that, but at the very least, Lloyd forgive the person who hurt him.
And that's his dad.
He was able to forgive him.
He was able to forgive him and made Lloyd's father, Jerry, rest in peace.
And of course, we cut back to the studio where we get the closing episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and we see the trolley coming by.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yep, and at his studio, Rogers goes back to that picture board of the 5 doors, and the 5th door is actually Lloyd Vogel's family
celebrating Christmas.
That is right. And of course, we get this final song. Like, to anybody who also is listening to this and has seen Mr. Rogers had like a couple of different closing songs, like Tomorrow, right?
Yes.
And then this one, I think this one's this one's also memorable too. It's Such a Good Feeling, right?
Yes. It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're grown inside, and when you wake up, ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling. The feeling you know that I'll be back when the day is new, and I'll have more ideas for you, and you'll have things that you want to talk about. I will too.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
And that's how the show ends, right?
And that's a cut.
And that's how the movie ends too. But it really ends with Mr. Rogers playing on the piano.
And you can hear the piano noises playing in the background too. And then Fred Rogers did the boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, he mentions that in the middle of the movie too. Whenever like he's feeling angry too.
Boom. And then he was able to continue on with the piano up until the lights went out.
Lights went out. We cut to the credits. We get behind the scenes moments of how this movie was made, of how the miniatures and the table sets, and of how the miniature town of New York, Pittsburgh, was brought to life through a toy set of miniatures. You kind of see that, right?
And especially the song "Do It, Do It, Do It, Do It."
You did it. And this is the real Mr. Rogers singing that song, and it's really good, like you did it, and we even see Mr. Rogers too,
yes.
The real Mr. Rogers saying, "You did it,
you did it, you did it," while putting in a shaped toy inside the box.
Yep, and that's it. That's the movie.
Yep, that is a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
I'll say this: 5 or 6 years later, this movie is still good.
Yep.
The story in this movie is really good too. Like, we really think about it. Like, yeah, this movie is basically about Mr. Rogers, but at the same time, it's about Lloyd Vogel and how he's basically interviewing Mr. Rogers, but also trying to like forgive his father, and I really like that story,
Yes.
The direction for this movie by Marielle Heller was good too. Like, I really enjoyed the direction that she brought to this movie. I mean, Tom Hanks and Matthew Rhys did a real good job in this movie.
Same with Chris Cooper. Well, all three actors did a fantastic job in their movies.
Like, everybody who was involved in this movie did a real good job. And if I were to rate this movie, I say 9 out of 10.
Oh, the musical score from Nate Heller was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The same with the story. Same with the story, and Tom Hanks really deserved that Oscar nomination for his role as Mr. Rogers.
And I think that really wraps up on this movie.
Matthew Rhys, I say he did
Matthew Rhys
did a very good job playing Lloyd Vogel in that movie. And speaking of which, Matthew Rhys collaborated with Tom Hanks before in Steven Spielberg's The Post.
That's right. So that wasn't so Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood was not his first collaboration.
Nope, it was 2017's The Post, to which Steven Spielberg directed it. And once again, rest in peace to Fred Rogers.
Yep, rest in peace to Fred Rogers.
Thank you, Fred Rogers, for being in the show.
For bringing this show to life, and the impact you have left on so many people.
You will forever be our neighbor.
And that is a wrap, and that is it. That is a wrap on this movie. That is a wrap on this breakdown, and a wrap on this episode.
Mark, thanks again for having me on the show, and I look forward to be collaborating with you more in the future.
Yep.
Well,
I know you will.
I'm about to head on to the trolley.
All right. Ding ding ding. Dun 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 dun. All right, I'm pretty sure I'm about to head on the trolley too. Probably the Codo Cinema Express. But anyway, that is a wrap on this episode. And to anybody who is listening, what did you all think of A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood? Did you like this movie? Did you not like the movie? Did you think this movie still holds up? I would like to hear your thoughts. But anyway, that is a wrap on this episode. Thank you all for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman.
And I'm Mike Codo.
Remember to watch movies and stay positive.